Week 7 fantasy football sleepers. We're back at it. We're talking sleepers. We're giving you all of the players that you need to stash and all of the players you need to stream. For some of you, this is going to be a video that's easy to watch. You're just going to grab a couple of these players, stick them on your bench, hope they pop off, and you save some money on the waiver wire next week. Waiver wire of the future, so to speak. For some of you, though, you're going to have to use these players in your starting lineup. But we're not out here throwing darts. We're making calculated decisions with our rosters, and we're looking to add players who either have an increased opportunity or their usage is trending up or the player ahead of them is banged up. For many reasons, these players' situations are changing, but they're still lower rostered. Every single player that I'm going to talk about tonight is available in 70% of leagues or more. So none of these players is rostered in more than 30% of leagues. These are guys that slip through the cracks, but it doesn't mean that they can't help you out. Every single week, right here at Player Profiler, I'm dropping this, and we've had a bunch of hits this season. Last week, we told you to scoop up Drake Maye. Drake Maye hit really, really well. Last week, we had a couple of other ones, but last week was sort of a quiet week. We're looking to do a lot better this week. And let's start it out. This week, we want to go right back to Drake Maye because Drake Maye is still out there in a number of leagues. You can go out and just grab him. He still is only rostered in, I'm pulling this up right now because I can't even believe it. I'm going to get the most recent one. 85% of leagues, he's available right now. And this is my favorite streamer to use this week. We just saw Caleb Williams shred the Jacksonville Jaguars defense. Now Drake Maye gets to go up against Jacksonville in London. Last week, Drake Maye passed for 3 touchdown passes in this is like a player that has mobility. He's got a big arm. He's got size. He's got athleticism. This is a no-brainer addition for fantasy managers. It also helps that the Patriots will be in comeback mode like week in, week out. So when people say last week Drake Maye was getting those stats in garbage time, they're right. But the Patriots are going to live in garbage time. Drake Maye hit Kayshon Boutte on a long 40-yard touchdown pass. He hit Demario Douglas. He hit Hunter Henry. This is a player trending up. There's a reason they took him in the top 3 of the NFL draft. Drake Maye is our top streaming option this week. We're going back to Daniel Jones too, and I don't love doing it. Daniel Jones let me down big time. Daniel Jones was one where we were sort of talking him up. He was a high-end QB2, sort of like almost touching QB1 line, and then he had a very disappointing game. That Cincinnati-New York game, super, super disappointing, but he was missing Malik Neighbors. He gets Malik Neighbors back. A positive is Tyrone Tracy is coming on. So Daniel Jones is still available in 81% of leagues. This is a player that you're probably more comfortable starting in a super flex format than in a single QB league. But the Eagles are not playing inspiring football at all. There's a chance that New York might just punch him in the mouth this week in MetLife Stadium, and Daniel Jones gets a bounce back. Quarterbacks look better when they have their number one target, and Malik Neighbors is the man. So Daniel Jones gets back his main target. Tyrone Tracy's coming on. He's still got Wan'Dale Robinson. Darius Slayton played very, very well, and they get Motor Singletary. Devin Singletary comes back as well. When we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about running backs. We're going to talk about wide receivers. We're going to talk about tight ends. A lot of names this week. We got a lot of names to cover. We're going to help you. Sleepers, streamers, and stashes. We're getting after it this week.
DFS getting harder every year, but we're here to make it easier with the DFS Dominator because I know a lot of optimizers keep coming out. Oh, our optimizer. What about this optimizer? But that optimizer. Well, we have a cash game optimizer that leverages the projections from Dario, Billy, the award-winning projections at playerprofiler.com, and builds the best lineups for cash games that have both upside and stability because that's what you want. It's a couple clicks, boom, boom, boom. You get the best possible lineup for your cash games. But for tournaments, traditional optimizers don't work. That's why we have a Lineup Genius, which takes you through the process of building lineups the way they should be built. Which quarterbacks you want to be overweight on, then building stacks, then setting run backs, then optimizing, and generating up to 150 lineups that you can easily import into DraftKings, into FanDuel. That's the DFS Dominator. It's only $45 a year, not a week, a year. Just go to Player Profiler, click on the DFS Dominator from the menu, and you won't be sorry.
Welcome back. Theo Gremminger, Player Profiler. I'm talking about fantasy football sleepers, streamers, and stashes. And I'm dropping this as a podcast as well. So if you don't want to have to watch the video every single week, go ahead and subscribe to Sleepers, Streamers, and Stashes. And if you enjoy this video, hit the like button if you're watching on YouTube. We got you covered every single week. We've had a number of hits, and we're looking to do it this week. A lot of running backs to cover, though. Ray Davis, still available in 70% of leagues, which is a little bit surprising considering he had a really, really strong game. Ray Davis actually handled the most touches that a Buffalo Bills running back has seen all season long. So Davis gave you the really big production, didn't find the end zone, but he handled a ton of touches, no fumbles. The Bills used him in a bell cow setting. He had more touches in a game than James Cook had all season long, and he showed that receiving upside. This is a player that even if James Cook is back this week, and it's looking like he is, that Ray Davis can be used as a gut shot flex, a player that probably earned himself a little bit of a role. It's probably going to be closer to like a 65-35 split. So a little bit more of a split backfield than what we've seen before with Ray Davis. But this is a player that you need to roster. If you don't want to use him, make sure you stash him. Still available in 70% of leagues. Very, very strong player. Isaac Guerendo available in 74% of leagues. Guerendo, with him, all it takes is one. So there's a bunch of scenarios here. The wheels are spinning. Jordan Mason has been limited all week long. If he plays, then Guerendo's a guy that you just want to stash. Guerendo is a player you wouldn't necessarily put in your lineup if Jordan Mason goes, but I would be willing to stash him because Jordan Mason's dealing with a shoulder injury. And shoulder injuries are funny. Sort of like James Cook has the toe injury, Jordan Mason has the shoulder injury. So with Guerendo, we saw that 76-yard run late in the fourth quarter. There's sort of like lukewarm feelings about him by fantasy managers, and I get it. He's not a perfect back, but he is a big-time athlete with speed in an offense that can really, really go off. The 49ers average 27 points per game. So Isaac Guerendo, make sure you're stashing him. Sticking at the running back position, we're talking about Sean Tucker. And Sean Tucker was the NFC Offensive Player of the Week. One of the best performances we've seen all season long. Sean Tucker had the third most yards from scrimmage by any skill position player this year. Think about that. Sean Tucker had the third most yards from scrimmage by the third most of any single player this year at the skill positions. Jamar Chase, Derrick Henry, Sean Tucker. Sean Tucker is like, how do you walk away from a heater at the blackjack table? And I know it's sort of like the pragmatic thinking that you want no part of a split backfield, but you're here watching sleepers, streamers, and stashes. You're looking for fantasy football sleepers. We don't want to get it twisted here. If he's available in your league, pause the podcast, pause the YouTube video, go scoop him up and add him to your bench. Because there's very few players in the NFL given this sort of limited opportunity that are 22, 23-year-old year two running back can give you 192 and 2 touchdowns. So like Todd Bowles has already said that this is going to be a ride the hot hand backfield. So Sean Tucker is a must-stash player for you. And if you're feeling bold, stick him in your lineup in a game that might absolutely pop off. Tampa Bay and Baltimore, that game could absolutely shoot out. This might be a 35-30 game, and the secondary back, not even necessarily the primary back, might end up putting points. Sean Tucker can also catch the football. He had 7 first downs as well. Coaches love players who convert first downs. This is also a player who was an undrafted free agent because of a heart thing. This was not a guy with like a knee or like a hip or like some crazy injury. It was a heart thing. And I'm not saying that that's not a serious thing, but it's obviously proved that the guy's healthy. The guy just went over for 190, 92 and 2. So it was a heart thing that kept him off a lot of teams do not draft, or kept him on a number of teams do not drafts. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers gave him one of those 6-figure undrafted free agent contracts. So he was like a priority UDFA. And now we saw it. So Bucky Irving is my guy. Everybody who watches Player Profiler knows I love Bucky Irving, but now this is a competition. Hot hand backfield is about the best scenario for Sean Tucker, but make sure you add him to your bench. This is one where this might not be the last we heard from Sean Tucker. Trey Benson, available in 82% of leagues. James Conner's banged up, but he will play. Trey Benson could see some extra work. This is more likely a stash than a stream, but an important one for fantasy managers, because if Conner were to miss time, Benson would be on the RB2 line. Stash him where you can. Another player for you to stash immediately, Blake Corum. Blake Corum available in 84% of leagues. Corum is the handcuff running back, but he's one of the more valuable handcuff running backs because of the value of the RB1 in a Sean McVay offense. It's an absolute machine. Kyron Williams balling, averaging 20-plus points per game. But Blake Corum would be an immediate top 15 weekly play at running back if he were to get this opportunity. Stash him everywhere. Kimani Vidal available in 86% of leagues. Vidal looked awesome, and we've been waiting for this from Kimani Vidal. He was like everyone's favorite day 3 pick. He fired up in rookie drafts. There was like the big FFPC Dynasty League, the $5,000 FFPC entry league. I'm not in that one, but somebody sent me the board, and Kimani Vidal was the first pick in the second round, and that's non-super flex, but it just goes to show you that people were really betting on this. And Kimani Vidal had 2 catches for 40 yards and a touchdown, only 4 carries though, but I expect the carries to increase as the coaching staff becomes more acclimated with using him. Gus Edwards is on the IR. Gus Edwards is averaging 9.5 carries per game. J.K. Dobbins has been terrific, but if he were to go down, Vidal would be potentially a league winner. And that's not me being a hype man, but if you look at the usage for the running backs in a Harbaugh-Roman offense, Kimani Vidal could really help settle some leagues if he had that backfield to himself. Go grab him, stash him, and if you're in a deep league, throw him in the flex spot because he's going to get 10 touches this week. Tyler Goodson, available in 90% of leagues. Now we're talking about a player you can stream. You can use Tyler Goodson this week. It depends on who you have, but I would put Tyler Goodson somewhere in the high-end RB3 line /flex. Jonathan Taylor set to miss another game. Mild high ankle sprain turned into 3 weeks missing for Taylor. And we saw Taylor this week looking very frustrated in an interview, talking about how much pain he's dealing with. So Taylor is a warrior. He's fighting to get back on the field, but this is a dude really dealing with pain. Tyler Goodson is going to get an increased opportunity. He's had at least 57 yards and 3 catches over the past 2 weeks. He showed more juice than Trey Sermon. Sermon also has been banged up this week. Look for Goodson to carry the load. He can be a streamer for teams looking for a flex or RB2. Dearness Johnson, Travis Etienne, game time decision. If Etienne misses, I think it should be Tank Bigsby getting the majority of the carries and the targets, but Dearness Johnson's going to mix in. Also, this is a weird coaching staff. Doug Peterson uses Tank Bigsby and he balls out and then gets a chance to use him a lot more, and it turns into like a hot hand backfield. I think that was probably the nature of they're losing the game by a lot, but at the end of the day, Dearness Johnson's going to get some work. It should be Tank Bigsby. If you're choosing between Bigsby and Johnson, it's definitely Bigsby. But if you're in a deep format, grab Dearness Johnson. It could end up being a 2-man backfield this week. Jaylen Wright, available in 91% of leagues. Devon Achane playing. Raheem Mostert playing. So leave Wright on your bench and stash him. But both of these players have taken shots this season, and Wright has the contingent upside as the next man in if either player were to miss time. We saw what Wright could do in week 5. Ran for over 80 yards, looked explosive, big, strong, and fast. This is a elite speed running back. Tua will eventually be back, and Jaylen Wright could have opportunities in the second half of the season. Emmanuel Wilson, available in 91% of leagues. Marshawn Lloyd, available in 95% of leagues. Both of these players are stashes only. And I'll throw out Ameer Abdullah, like emergency dart throw, because Dylan Lobby's not ready. Zamir White's banged up, and there's no wide receivers in Vegas. So, like, if you're in like an FFPC, NFFC, and you're looking for somebody to stick on your bench as like the 20th man, if Alexander Madison were to go down at this moment, I can't believe I'm even saying this. Ameer Abdullah. If you're, that's like the sicko one for the YouTube watchers and the podcast listeners. I put everybody else in my article. Ameer Abdullah didn't make the article to show you like where I'm at on this. And if you want to read my article, I appreciate it. All my articles are free at playerprofiler.com. I also write a Dynasty article for fantasypoints.com. That's also free most weeks. Go check that out. Tight end. Hunter Henry is my favorite streamer this week. He's available in 71% of leagues. Jacksonville was just shredded by Cole Kmet. I talked about Drake Maye, how Drake Maye is going to ball. Hunter Henry scored a touchdown with Drake Maye last week. Maybe it happens 2 weeks in a row. This is not rocket science. A defense struggling versus the position, a tight end who the quarterback favors. Use him if you need a tight end. He's a low-end tight end one this week. Colby Parkinson. And I know I talk about Colby Parkinson every week here, and I talk about him on my waivers wire show every week. I don't know why. I like Colby Parkinson. Got the big contract. He's got elite snap share. He's on the field all the time. And we saw Tyler Higbee in that offense have some productivity over the years. So Parkinson was targeted 20 times over the past 2 weeks. That's a number that should lower with the return of Cooper Kupp. But the Rams offense could also take a step forward and become more efficient. So Colby Parkinson, interesting one. Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz had a season-high 68 receiving yards in Week 6's loss to Baltimore. High-end tight end 2 this week versus a leaky Carolina defense. Zach Ertz is like the boring tight end play that's not going to kill your fantasy week. He had the bad week in Week 5, but he had 8 targets that week, did nothing. But he showed you last week against Baltimore that, like, Jaden Daniels likes him. This is a guy that it's nothing special, but if you want 8 points in a PPR league, 10 points in a PPR league, Zach Ertz can find a way to get you that. Noah Fant has had 2 games in his last 4 with 6 catches and 60-plus receiving yards. Seattle faces off against Atlanta in a game that could produce a lot of points. Jatavian Sanders, a fun stash. Sanders has been targeted 12 times over the past 2 games. This is a player that anybody who followed my Dynasty content, Sanders was a guy that was very interesting coming out of Texas. Very productive player. Played with Xavier Worthy, played with Adonai Mitchell, played with you name it. Like this is a player, Jordan Whittington. Like that Texas team had a bunch of receivers, and Jatavian Sanders is one that really stood out and had a nice college career. Was supposed to be the number 2 tight end selected in the NFL draft. Ben Sinnott had a much better combine, passed him by. A couple other tight ends were drafted ahead of him, but Sanders was the first pick in the 4th round. So he was the number 1 pick on day 3 by Carolina, and now we're starting to see him being used. Posted career highs in every category in Week 6. The Panthers could be without Deontay Johnson, but it looks like he's probable to play. He was out there today, but he dealt with a lot of injuries this week. Ribs. Ribs are kind of like the shoulder, the toe, the ribs. It's like pain tolerance, and a bad thing happens and they're on the bench. Jatavian Sanders is a nice person to stash right now for your bench. Grant Calcatera, interesting player. Grant Calcatera was a big-time recruit at Oklahoma, had some juice, had some enthusiasm, dealt with concussions, a lot of weird stuff in his career. But this is a player that is getting his opportunity in Philly. And last week when Dallas Goedert went down, he had 4 catches, 67 yards. He should be added in tight end premium formats like right now, just to see where this thing goes. Maybe he ends up getting similar usage to Dallas Goedert. This is not like a guy who is not without talent. So that was a lot of names at tight end, a lot of names at running back. Final position we're going to cover is the wide receiver position. And this is a lot of times we can find the quality wide receivers here. Let's talk about Alec Pierce. Starting Alec Pierce is like riding a motorcycle on the highway, going 125 in the pouring rain. It's a rush, but a lot of bad things can happen and it can end poorly. Alec Pierce has shown a connection with Anthony Richardson this season. This is definitely a dart throw, but with Pierce, all it takes is one big play and he house calls it. And it could be a 50-yard touchdown, and there you go. So I don't recommend this one necessarily, but he's interesting. Michael Wilson. Michael Wilson is one I do really like. We saw that Marvin Harrison Jr. has not been cleared from the concussion protocol as of Friday. He was limited at practice, so Wilson's not like being held out, but he hasn't been cleared yet. And Wilson is one of my favorite streaming options this week. He's caught a touchdown or had 60 receiving yards in 3 out of his last four games. He's hit double-digit scoring numbers as well in 3 out of 4 games. So he's had 10 points or more in 3 out of 4, a touchdown or 60 receiving yards in 3 out of 4. So like he's been right there. Second-year player, was a third-round pick. If Harrison Jr. misses, Wilson's a fun flex. Jalen Tolbert, available in 78% of leagues. Stash Jalen Tolbert if he was dropped in your league. Dallas was steamrolled against Detroit, but Tolbert has been solid. Rashod Bateman available in 86% of leagues. Bateman's been trending up. He scored 16 points and 11 points over his past 2 games in PPR. His snaps are identical to Zay Flowers. And again, we talk about chasing games. Baltimore, Tampa Bay could pop off. This could be a game where we chase the game and we hope for a very high scoring one. The Baltimore offense is an absolute machine. It also helps Rashod Bateman that we don't see the usual tight end absorbing a ton of targets this year in Baltimore. So Bateman's got a chance to kind of stick with this double-digit scoring. Let's see where it goes. And if you don't want to use him in your lineup, just stash him. Another player that should be stashed, Xavier Legette. He's available in 81% of leagues. Deontay Johnson missed most of the week with a rib injury. Legette has played very well. He finished with a touchdown in what amounts to back-to-back weeks. He was hurt in week 5 and played limited snaps. Washington has been generous to opposing wide receivers this season, and Xavier Legette could be used in a pinch. But for me, he's probably a stash for most of you. But again, Deontay Johnson, the rib injury, this is one to keep an eye on. Also, he could have a setback. He could have a setback on Sunday with a rib injury. So Xavier Legette, if Deontay misses, is like a fun flex play. And he's more of a dart throw, touchdown, or bust flex play if Deontay Johnson plays. But with Washington, we know Jaden Daniels is going to ball out. We know it's going to be a lot of pressure on Carolina to keep up. The game flow could support this. Carolina gives up a ton of points too. So they're going to be in passing situations a lot. Jordan Whittington, available in 92% of leagues. Whittington has been targeted 18 times, and he's caught 13 of them heading into the Rams bye week. Even with Cooper Kupp's return, he should at least be stashed. But I think this whole notion that Jordan Whittington is going to disappear because Cooper Kupp is back is the wrong one. Whittington is really coming on. And again, when Puka's back, maybe he gets boxed out in the targets. But for now, I think he slots in as the secondary target. I think a lot of Kyren Williams. Cooper Kupp, let's see where he's at in week 1. I would imagine he gets his usual double-digit targets in week 1. All the practice tape of Cooper Kupp looked good this week. Looks like Cooper Kupp. But Jordan Whittington is coming on. This is a rookie who just came off of an 89 receiving yard career high in week 5. So I like Jordan Whittington, and I think a lot of people are giving up on him. Stash him, see where this thing goes. Maybe I saved you a little bit of FAAB. Super deep streamer dart throw. Throw a dart at it. This is the one I don't like, but some of you are in really, really sick, deep leagues where you need these spot starts. If Marvin Harrison Jr. misses, Greg Dortch is a dart throw. Random Greg Dortch game. If Harrison Jr. sits. Trey Tucker. Trey Tucker has been invisible. This is a guy who had 2 really solid games in a row for us, and then completely has been invisible for 2 weeks in a row. But you have no Jacoby Myers, and Devontae Adams has been traded to the New York Jets. So there's really no competition at the wide receiver spot in Vegas. An absolute ton of Brock Bowers. And then you've got guys like DJ Turner competing with Trey Tucker. Trey Tucker also gets those manufactured rushing attempts too. Vegas will put the ball in his hands this weekend against the LA Rams. Elijah Moore, 99% available. Streamer, dart throw only. This is also one where if you want to add him in as a stash to see where the targets go, the Amari Cooper was actually a very large target share. Amari Cooper had elite usage. You just didn't notice it because the Browns offense has been so bad. The Browns get back Nick Chubb. Maybe this settles him in. And maybe Elijah Moore is the beneficiary. I would bet on Jerry Jeudy being the beneficiary, but it could be Elijah Moore. Ray McLeod, available in 80% of leagues. Deep league dart throw consideration only. It would really take a Darnell Mooney or Drake London injury for Ray McLeod to become like relevant weekly. But the guy does catch passes, and this is a really a high-flying offense right now in Atlanta. So this is another game, Atlanta-Seattle, where we can chase it. This game could pop off. So Ray McLeod, really just, I'm not too excited about him, but I did want to list him here because he is going to catch some passes. One stash that I think is trending up and is worth you stashing, Noah Brown, available in 98% of leagues, Washington Commanders. We talk about Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels, an absolute stud. Terry McLaurin playing fantastic, but they could use another wide receiver to develop, and it seems like it could be Noah Brown. Noah Brown, of course, had the really big weeks last year with C.J. Stroud in Houston, comes over to Washington after he gets cut, and he was targeted 8 times last week against Baltimore. He hasn't cracked 60 receiving yards, and he hasn't had a touchdown yet. So let's put him on our benches and see what happens. But if he gets another 8 targets and we start talking about that sort of target share in a Jaden Daniels-led offense, then that's a player we want to have on our bench for these bye weeks, and he'd end up being a potential waiver wire add next week. We want to save you that money. Again, I'm Theo Gremminger. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast at Player Profiler. Make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube network. Neither one of those things costs you anything, but it helps support our content we're putting out. Make sure you're checking out my Waiver Wire show, and that's Waiver Wired. It's dropping as a podcast, and it's dropping on YouTube. Usually that's happening either Monday evening or early Tuesday morning. And then check out press coverage. I'm dropping that every single week. We had John Hansen on last week. We're going to have Dwayne McFarland on next week. So we're everywhere. We're crushing content. We're going to help you win this season, and we're going to hit it. I think this is a fun week. And we got to remember, week 7, 8, and 9, we got to win these ones. We're not dealing with a crazy amount of bye weeks. It's like minimal bye weeks, then no bye weeks in week 8, and then minimal bye weeks. The crazy bye weeks happen later. So we got to sweep the board. Let's get those W's this weekend, and we'll see you next week on Sleepers, Streamers, and Stashes.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to playerprofiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, data analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.